Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the lowest mileage H2 Hummer in the country. What you see here is a 2003 Hummer H2, and what makes this otherwise regular Hummer so special is the fact that it has only 770 miles on the odometer. Now, correction, it had 770 miles on the odometer yesterday when I picked it up. I drove it home and now I rolled it over to 800, so now it has 808 miles on the odometer. However, at the time of filming of this video, I did my research, I searched throughout the internet, and I could not find a truck that even comes close to this mileage. There are low mileage H2s out there, but nowhere near under 1,000 miles. I have borrowed this amazing chunk of steel and plastic from the guys at Prime One Motorsports. They have one of the most unique and interesting collection of cars out there. I will link their information down below, so check them out when you get a chance. I know there's a lot of hate directed at the H2 on YouTube and on the internet in general. One famous YouTuber even said that this was the most embarrassing truck to be seen in. Some of the criticism include the plastics that are on the exterior of the truck that make it look tough, and some of the fake features that transformed their way from the H1 to the H2, but only in looks but not in actual function. However, what these internet experts forgot to tell you is the fact that this truck sold very well through the first several years of its production run, despite its insanely high price tag. In 2003, the base model H2 started at $49,200, and the prices went up from there. As a matter of fact, this truck was so popular that General Motors was actually manufacturing them in Russia for the Russian domestic market. You heard me correctly. In 2004, General Motors partnered with a Russian auto assembler to build these trucks for the Russian market. And the only reason that this truck started to lose its popularity and everybody jumped on it and started criticizing it is because the economy collapsed as we know it, and the General Motors went bankrupt. They asked for bailout money, and taxpayers had to bail them out. And media kind of, jumped on this truck because, it's obviously so big and so obnoxious and in American excess, and that's what media does. They started criticizing it and they started talking crap about it, and it lost its popularity during that time period, which resulted in a complete image collapse and General Motors basically shutting down the brand because they could not sell it. The H2 was available from 2003 until 2009, and it was manufactured in Indiana under contract by AM General, the manufacturer of the original H1. Now, the early versions, the 2003s, had a 6-liter V8 that made 316 horsepower that was mated to a 4L65E 4-speed automatic transmission. In 2004, the horsepower was bumped up to 325, and in 2008 we saw some major redesigns in the H2, not on the exterior but on the interior, which was completely redesigned. And 2008 and 2009 models received a more powerful engine. It was a 6.2 liter that made 393 horsepower, and then transmission was also upgraded to a 6L80E, which was a 6-speed automatic. So what does it feel like to drive a practically brand new Hummer H2? And for all those internet experts out there, no, it's not a Tahoe. It's not an H2 body on top of the Tahoe frame. It doesn't ride like a Tahoe. This actually rides on a GMT 820 modified platform, which is kind of a hybrid. The front portion of the frame is from a Chevy 2500 heavy-duty truck. The back portion of the frame is from a Chevy 1500 truck, and the middle section was actually designed specifically for the H2 Hummer to give it higher ground clearance. Now, ironically, they added those huge side steps, effectively stealing all the ground clearance that they spent all this time and money designing for the H2. And again, this is not a Tahoe, this is not a Suburban, despite what the internet makes you believe. And this truck does not ride like one. I have driven Tahoes, I've driven Suburbans, and the ride is completely different, and the driving experience is completely different in this truck. And that's partially because of how unique the interior is. I don't know if you can see on camera, but everything is far away. The camera is actually very far away. It's mounted on the windshield, but I can't even reach it. I can't even get to it. This is how far away it is, and the truck is massive. However, there's an optical illusion of being in a claustrophobic space, and I understand why they did this. It's kind of a carryover from the H1 Hummer, which was, if anybody ever sat inside of a H1 or even seen an H1, you know, you're sitting like this. There's barely any room, despite the fact that H1 is the size of a Titanic. And they, you know, they wanted that experience in here as well, and you truly get that. The windows are very low, so you feel like you're sitting in a tank. And again, this is an optical illusion, because look at how much room. There's a ton of room in here, but you know, the illusion is that you're in a military vehicle, you know, tough car. Now, obviously, since this truck is practically brand new, you know, and the interior is in pristine condition, you don't hear any noises or rattles inside. But I have ridden inside of H2 Hummers with over 100,000 miles, and you know, these interiors don't hold up very well if you don't maintain them and if you don't garage these trucks. And this is my chief complaint with all GM products. And every time I review one, somebody goes in the comments section and says, you know, you're always going to complain about GM interiors. Like, yes, I will always complain about GM interiors, because they haven't gotten it right until 2015. That's when they upped their interior game. But for the most part, it's the typical, you know, GM interior from this time period. I actually did review a 2002 Trans Am with 565 miles on odometer, and that car also belonged to Prime One Motors. And this truck and that car smell identical. They smell exactly the same. They use the exactly same plastics. Obviously, there's only 1 year between the two of them, but you know, it's just. It's a shame, because it's a cool truck, and you know, they added these cheap plastics and they put some bolts in here, you know, like just for toughness, but they're not really fooling anyone. As far as handling goes, I drove this truck yesterday on the highway, and you know, I took some exit ramps here and there, and this is no Lamborghini or Ferrari, and it should be driven accordingly. There's sufficient power, but you can feel the weight. Yesterday when we were shooting the B-roll footage for you guys, I had trouble because my wife was driving the camera car, and she's in a Mustang, and I had to be on the, you know, on the phone with her. I was like, listen, you got to slow down, because I can't keep up. This truck is not fast enough, you know, to keep up with your Mustang, and you're just flooring it all the time, and you know, I can't do this. You know, you got to slow down. I have to be honest with you fellas, I was actually pretty scared yesterday to drive this thing. I've never driven an H2. I've ridden in several of them, but I never had the chance to drive one, and I was intimidated in the beginning, because I mean, look at this thing. It looks pretty scary on the outside, and I thought it was going to be a challenging experience. I've driven an H1 years ago, and it was quite a drive, so it required some effort, and I thought this was going to be the same, but that's not the case. This truck is actually pretty easy to drive once you get used to it, and I had it on the highway yesterday, and it was an enjoyable experience. And again, it doesn't ride like a Tahoe, it doesn't ride like a Suburban, it doesn't have that floatiness to it. The ride is actually pretty harsh, and I imagine it's due to the, you know, aggressive tires that it has. And once you get used to this, you know, sort of you know, claustrophobic feel, even though there's a ton of room in here, I mean, I feel like tiny in this truck, but at the same time, it is so claustrophobic. And you know, the visibility is okay. Out the sides, it's fine, but through the back window, there are some struggles, because as you can see, there's a spare tire back there, and you know, the headrests are in the way, so you have this tiny little window, but you know, you make do with what you have. The other challenge that actually presented itself yesterday, I tried to wash this truck. I did wash it, but it was difficult. I struggled because the massive size of this thing. I couldn't even wipe the windshield in the center. I just couldn't reach there. Now, going back and talking about the criticism that this truck has received over the years, I understand where most people are coming from. I truly do. And some of the features that you see on this truck are truly laughable, and they're only here for looks. You know, I give you an example. The tire inflation system from the H1 didn't make its way to this truck, but the wheels look like there is a tire inflation system. There's like the little cap that they put on there. I know the hooks on the hood received a lot of complaints from people. It's like, well, they're not real, because on the H1, you know, they're attached to the frame, and you can airdrop the H1. It's like, who's gonna drop the H2? Like, who's gonna do that? You know what I mean? Nobody. Yes, they're there. Yes, they're plastic. You can lift the hood from the hooks. No, they're not attached to the frame. But this is a stylistic feature. And again, keep in mind that this is what people wanted back then. People wanted a tough-looking truck. People wanted a truck that they can take off-road. And it's a very capable truck, despite what internet says. This truck can go off-road, and you know, if you remove the side steps, you have a lot of ground clearance. Just go and look at the Russian Hummer Club. See what these guys do with these Hummers, stock, without any modifications. It's a very capable performer, and it can go off-road, and it can compete with the Jeeps and the best of them. Well, fellas, I am not going to drive this truck anymore. I'm parked in my usual spot. That's it for today. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, share, so you can become friends of ours. Thanks. Bye.